Harper, 22 November, 1931. The Mercy Hospital does not live up to its name. Can you pay? The tired-looking woman in the reception booth demands, through a round hole in the glass. Paying patients go to the front of the line. How long is the wait? Harper grunts. The woman inclines her head towards the triage waiting room. It is standing room only, apart from the people who are sitting or lying half-collapsed on the floor, too sick or tired or plain goddamn bored to stay on their feet. A few glance up with hope or outrage, or some unsustainable mix of the two, in their eyes. The others have the same look of resignation he's seen in farm horses on their last legs, ribs as pronounced as the cracks and furrows in the dead earth they strain to plow against. You shoot a horse like that. He digs in the pocket of the stolen coat for the crumpled $5 bill he found there, along with a safety pin, 3 dimes, 2 quarters, and a key, worn out in a way that feels familiar. Or maybe he has become accustomed to tarnish. Is this enough for mercy, sweetheart? He asks, shoving the bill through the window. Yes. She holds his gaze to tell him that she is not ashamed to charge, even though the very act of doing so says otherwise. She rings a little bell, and a nurse comes to collect him, her practical shoes slapping against the linoleum. E. Capel, it reads on her name badge. She is pretty, in an ordinary sort of way, with rosy cheeks and carefully ironed cherry-brown curls under her white cap. Apart from her nose, which is turned up too much, so it looks like a snout. Little piggy, he thinks. Come with me, she says, irritated that he's there at all, already cataloguing him as so much more human trash. She turns and strides away so that he has to jolt after her. Each step sends pain shooting up to his hip, like a Chinese rocket, but he's determined to keep up. Every ward they pass is crammed to capacity, sometimes with 2 people to a bed, laid head to foot, all the sickness inside spilling out. Not as bad as the field hospitals, he thinks. Mangled men clustered on blood-stained stretchers, among the stink of burns and rotting wounds and shit and vomit and sour fever sweats, the incessant moaning like a terrible choir. There was that boy from Missouri with his leg blown off, he remembers. He wouldn't let up screaming, keeping them all awake until Harper snuck over, as if to comfort him. What he actually did was slide his bayonet in through the idiot boy's thigh, just above the bloody wreckage, and neatly flicked it up to sever the artery, just like he'd practiced on the straw dummies in training. Stab and twist. A gut wound will drop any man in his tracks every time. Harper always found it more personal than bullets, getting right up into someone. It made the war bearable. No chance about here, he supposes, but there are other ways to get rid of troublesome patients. You should break out the black bottle, Harper says, just to rile the chubby nurse. They'd thank you for it. She gives a little snort of contempt as she leads him past the doors of the private wards, tidy single-occupant rooms that are mostly vacant. Don't you tempt me. Quarter the hospital is acting as a pest house right now. Typhoid, infection, poison would be a blessing, but you don't let the surgeons hear you talking about no black bottle. Through an open window, he sees a girl lying in bed surrounded by flowers. She has the look of a film star, even though it's been over a decade since Charlie Chaplin up and left Chicago for California and took the whole movie industry with him. Her hair is sweat-plastered and damp blonde ringlets around her face, made paler by the wan winter sunlight struggling through the window. But as he falters outside, her eyes flutter open. She half sits up and smiles at him radiantly, as if she was expecting him, and he'd be welcome to come sit for a while and talk with her. Nurse Capel is having none of it. She grabs him by the elbow and escorts him away. No gawping now. That's the last thing that hussy needs, another admirer. Who is she? He looks back. No one. A nudie dancer. Little idiot poisoned herself with radium. It's her act. She paints herself with it so she glows in the dark. Don't worry, she'll be discharged soon enough, Then you can see as much of her as you like. All of her, the way I hear it. She ushers him into the doctor's room, bright white with an antiseptic sting. Now sit here, and let's take a look at what you've done to yourself. He hops up unsteadily onto the examination table. She screws up her face in concentration as she cuts away the filthy rags he has tied as tight as he could bear in a stirrup under his heel. You're stupid, you know that? The little smile at the corner of her mouth so that she can get away with talking to him like this, waiting to come here. You think this would get better all on its own? She's right. It doesn't help he's been sleeping rough for the last 2 nights, camped out in a doorway with a cardboard box to sleep on and a stolen coat for a blanket, because he can't go back to his tent, in case Clayton and his stooges are waiting with their pipes and hammers. The neat silver scissor blades go snick-snick through the rag binding, which has cut white lines into his swollen foot so that it looks like a trussed hand. Now who's a little piggy? What's stupid, he thinks bitterly, is that he came through the war without any permanent damage, and now he's going to be crippled from falling into some hobo's hidey hole. The doctor blusters into the room, an older man with comfortable padding round his belly, and his thick gray hair swept around his ears like a lion's mane. And what's your complaint today, sir? The question is no less patronizing for the accompanying smile. Well, I ain't been dancing in glow-in-the-dark paint. Nor will you have the opportunity, by the looks of it, the doctor says, still smiling as he takes the swollen foot between his hands and flexes it. He ducks deftly, professionally even, when Harper roars in pain and swings at him. Keep that up, sport, if you want to get checked out on your hair, the doctor grins, paying or not. This time he flexes the foot up and down, up and down. Harper grits his teeth and clenches his fists to stop himself from lashing out. Can you pull up your toes on your own? He says, watching intently. Oh, good. That's a good sign. Better than I thought. Excellent. You see here, he says to the nurse, pinching the hollow indentation above the heel. Harper groans. That's where the tendon should connect. Oh, yes. The nurse pinches the skin. I can feel it. What does that mean? It means you should spend the next few months on your back in the hospital, sport, but I'm guessing that's not an option for you. Not unless it's free, or you have concerned patrons willing to sponsor your convalescence, like our radium girl. The doctor winks. We can put you in a cast, send you off with a crutch, but a ruptured tendon isn't going to heal itself. You should stay off your feet for at least 6 weeks. I can recommend a shoemaker who specializes in medical footwear to raise the heel, which will help it along some. How am I supposed to do that? I gotta work. Harper is pissed at the whine that creeps into his voice. We're all facing financial difficulties, Mr. Harper. Just ask the hospital administrators. I suggest you do what you can, he adds wistfully. I don't suppose you have syphilis, do you? No. Pity. There's a study starting in Alabama that would have paid for all your medical care if you did, although you'd have to be a Negro. I'm not that either. Too bad, the doctor shrugs. Will I be able to walk? Oh yes, the doctor says, but I wouldn't count on being able to audition for Mr. Gershwin. Harper hobbles out of the hospital, his ribs bound, his foot in a cast, his blood full of morphine. He reaches into his pocket to feel how much money he has left, $2 and change, but then his fingers brush the jagged teeth of the key, and something opens in his head like a receiver. Maybe it's the drugs, or maybe it was always waiting for him. He never noticed before that the streetlights hum, a low frequency that burrows in behind his eyeballs. And even though it was afternoon and the lights are off, they seem to flare as he steps under them. The hum skips ahead to the next light, as if beckoning him, this way, and he'd swear he can hear crackling music, a faraway voice calling to him like a radio that needs to be tuned in. He follows the path of the humming streetlights, going as fast as he can manage, but the crutch is unwieldy. He turns down State, and it leads him through West Loop into the canyons of Madison Street, with skyscrapers looming 40 stories high on either side. He passes through Skid Row, where $2 might buy him a bed for a while, but the humming and the lights lead him on, into the Black Belt, where the shabby jazz joints and cafe give way to cheap houses, stacked on top of each other, with ragged children playing in the street, and old men with hand-rolled cigarettes sitting on the steps, watching him balefully. The street narrows, and the buildings crowd in on one another, casting chill shadows over the sidewalk. A woman laughs from one of the upstairs apartments, a sound abrupt and ugly. There are signs everywhere he looks. Broken windows in the tenements, handwritten notices in the empty shop windows below. Closed for business, closed until further notice, and once, just sorry. A clamminess comes in from the lake on the wind that cuts through the bleak afternoon and under his coat. As he gets deeper into the warehouse district, the people thin out and then vanish altogether, and in their absence the music swells, sweet and plaintive. And now he can make out the tune. Somebody from somewhere, and the voice whispers urgently, keep on, Harper Curtis." The music carries him over the railroad tracks, deep in the west side, and up the stairs of a workers' lodging house, indistinguishable from the other wooden tenements in the row, shouldering in on each other, with peeling paint and boarded-up bay windows, and a notice that reads "Condemned by the City of Chicago," pasted up on the planks that have been nailed across the front doors and exits. "Make your mark for President Hoover right here, you hopeful men." The music is coming from behind the door of 1818, an invitation. He reaches under the crossed planks and tries the door, but it's locked. Harper stands on the step, full of the sense of a terrible inevitability. The street is utterly abandoned. The other houses are boarded up, or their curtains are drawn tight. He can hear traffic a block over, a hawker selling peanuts. Get 'em hot, eat 'em on the trot. But it sounds dull, as if coming through blankets wrapped around his head, whereas the music is a sharp splinter that drives right through his skull. The key. He sticks his hand in the pocket of his coat, suddenly terrified that he has lost it. He's relieved to find that it's still here, bronze, printed with the marquee L in town. The lock on the door matches up. Trembling, he slides it home. It catches. The door swings into the open darkness, and for a long, terrible moment he stands paralyzed by possibilities, and then he ducks under the boards, negotiating his crutch, awkwardly, through the gap, and into the house.